Holy Gospel is from the Gospel of Matthew, the 2nd chapter. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him, and calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that had been seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of Jesus the Christ.
We are seated. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. You have to wonder if maybe the prophet anticipated a winter in Geneva. I don't know about you, but where I live, this past week has been dark. The sun rises so late, it stays low in the sky, and it sets before the afternoon is gone. And there was an unending blanket of fog. The week was completely gray, without color, without evidence that there might be a sun anywhere. Now, I know some of us might be from similar climates or even further north, so perhaps you are hardier than I am, but I'm sure there are a few folks here who have similar feelings. As Geneva's cloudy winter hangs over us through January and February, March, and sometimes April, we really can get a sense of thick darkness hanging over our heads. Friends who have spent a few winters here have shared with me that they end up nearly hibernating. They just hide the whole dreary winter, close in on themselves in their apartment, not so likely to go out for activities or to socialize. Just wait for that sun to come and clear their heads. We don't look up as much. There's not so much to see. Those mountains that are so beautiful and bring us such joy so much of the year, can't see them. Fog blocks our way. On occasion this past week, the fog kept me from seeing more than about a car's length ahead of me as I made my way after dark. Today, as we join the Magi on their journey, we're called to reflect on the light. But of course, that image of light is so powerful because we each know all too well the power of darkness and of fog to limit our vision, to smother our enthusiasm. We yearn for the light because so often we cannot see the road ahead of us. We move slowly, we move tentatively, we move in circles because we're not certain of our surroundings. Maybe not literally, of course, but all of these things are true. We stop and stare at our own feet because sometimes it seems there's nothing else worth looking at. We get lost, get depressed. Sometimes we are afraid. So what is it in your life? Where do you find yourself in the dark? Something fogging up your view of the world, blocking your ability to see the path in front of you? Are there clouds that hang above you that limit your imagination, that close off your ability to see God working in the world? We've all got it at one time or another. What's your fog? We're thirsty for light, for something to break through that fog, aren't we? To draw us out of ourselves and to hold our attention. I have to tell you, the glow of our town's fancy new LED holiday twinkling light displays really catches my eyes. I don't know what it is, but at the end of a dismal, foggy day, those lights twinkle and flash, and I find myself groaning, oh, next week they're going to be gone. Something about the way they sparkle catches my eye, pulls my eyes towards them and actually away from the road I'm supposed to be looking at. That's the problem, isn't it? Even in the middle of a dark week or a dark time, there are always lights competing for our attention. The problem is they flash and they dance, but they don't actually light the road. Do you find useless lights out there in your life? Things that catch your eye, that offer maybe to push away the fog for a while, to break up some of that darkness, and then turn out just to be a bad imitation of the real thing? Things that shine brightly for a moment and then fail. They don't deliver in the long run. Find things that are flashy and entertaining, but turn out just to be there to sell you something. It's impressive to me that the Magi didn't get distracted by those kinds of lights when they traveled. They were following a star, told them there would be a new king of the Judeans. Didn't give a street address. They had to stop repeatedly and ask for directions. Surely there were many more likely candidates for a new king, for the light of the world, than a little poor kid in a backwater town. Surely Herod and his court were appealing. If nothing else, the life that these Magi left behind was clearly pretty nice. They had gold, frankincense, and myrrh at their disposal to give away. They had the leisure to travel for years on end to find this new king. But none of those flashier candidates kept them from making it to Bethlehem. Because when you see the true light, that poor imitation loses its appeal, doesn't it? On Friday, my family drove up above the fog into the Jura, and it was just lovely. There were still clouds overhead, but the sun broke through a few times. What a difference. No amount of flashy LED lights can do that, can they? That moment of a sunbeam on the snow is so clear and intense and bright that you know it doesn't compare. Just the memory of that light beats most of our best attempts to reproduce it, doesn't it? Each of us here this morning is here because we have been called by that true light. Somehow, despite the fog, despite the flashy lights all around us, we have seen that ray of sunlight and have been brought to Jesus. Like the Magi, we may not be clear on exactly where this path is going, and like them, we may be fuzzy indeed on the big picture. I doubt they expected the king of the Judeans to end up on a cross. But we have made it to this point. We are here. We know that true light when we see it. What lights led you to the baby? How has God brought you to this moment? What is it that is that point where you have met Emmanuel, God with us in your life? Something brought you here today. Something brought you to the baby Jesus. Who is it? What is it around you that shines with that light of God's glory, that little ray of sunshine in the midst of the world's darkness? That you are here today to see the baby. We know that true light when we see it. It brings hope, it brings clarity, warmth, growth, a sense of direction, some orientation to the world around us. And as the psalmist said, that light is the light of justice, the light of righteousness, defense of the poor, the end of oppression, peace and deliverance for the weak, for the needy. That light shines the end of violence. It shines the redemption of the things that seem beyond hope. The light of God with us shines the way to the transformation of our brokenness into God's new life. What is it in you that is thirsting for that light? Thirsting for the growth that it brings, for clarity or transformation, for peace. Where in your life do you bow down like the Magi and worship that light who is love and power and the power to offer you things that are beyond your own power? The good news today is that no one is outside of that light. Jew and Gentile, as Paul said, those were the only categories known to the people he was writing about. To a Jewish audience, there were Jews and Gentiles. That's it. That is how you sum up everybody. Jew and Gentile. All nations gathered together. No darkness, no cloud, no fog exists that God will allow to separate us from him. Nothing is beyond the power of that ray of God's transforming light. Take a moment, if you would. Humor me. Maybe close your eyes or take a few deep breaths and just sit in that light. Worship. Recognize the presence of God with us here. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. Now Herod, he wasn't too thrilled with the light, was he? He was anxious. What was the word? Herod was disturbed, I think. Because light has a habit of shining everywhere, doesn't it? Showing us things that we might not want to see, lighting up things that we hoped were covered. I don't know about you, but I'm often disappointed to find that things I thought were clean in our house, like a shirt freshly laundered or a kitchen floor that I've kind of given a once-over, that look fairly clean or at least acceptable under the light of dim light bulb. In the morning, when there is actual sunshine, are revealed to be still carrying that stain, actually sticky and in dire need of a mop. The light shows us things, doesn't it? We get used to the darkness, don't we? Fog can be useful. As we heard in last week's readings, Herod had no plans to come and sit in the light of God's presence. Justice for the poor and an end to oppression, those are not good news to Herod. And God's light only makes clear just how dirty and bloody his way of doing things is. So Herod had a plan. Kill the baby. Snuff out that light before it starts making trouble. We find ways of operating in the dark that won't withstand the light of day, will they? We find that fog convenient. It covers over small things. It makes other things more fuzzy, lots of gray areas. It makes our false lights more appealing to those around us, right? The real light, that bright light, brings out the uncomfortable truth. Herod had a stake in maintaining the status quo. He was invested in the way things are. And he was big and dramatic about it, right? He had power and money and the ability to send soldiers to kill people and all that. But we're invested too, aren't we? We have things in our lives that shrink from the light. We have ways in which we're better off if things just stay the same, don't we? So we've arrived here with the Magi at this moment. We have seen the glory of God incarnate, tangible. Emmanuel means God physically here with us in our dark and foggy world. Question for the Magi and for us is, where's the path from here? Today is the celebration of Epiphany. We haven't quite finished the 12 days of Christmas, but Epiphany is the time when we turn and head out from the manger. Having seen the baby, are the Magi going to go back the way they came? Are they going to take that known route? Report back to Herod? Retrace their steps? After all, they don't have a star pointing the way anymore. Retracing your steps, going back home, seems like a safe bet. And for us, that well-worn, that familiar road to the way things have always been, it's probably almost instinct, right, to do what's familiar. If we let them, I don't know about you, but I always find I get on autopilot quite easily when I'm distracted, and my feet take me on the usual paths. If we let them, our feet would trace us down those paths that walk through the fog and through the darkness towards those flashing neon lights that don't really satisfy, but they're bright, they're there, they sparkle. But there's another path from here. The Magi go home by another road. I can't exactly say where it leads. Magi couldn't either. They didn't know their final destination. But that's the thing when you follow the light of the world. There really isn't a final destination. There's not a point where we can say, we have arrived, we are there, it's done. The light always pulls us away again, pulls us from what's familiar, from what is easy. On this path, if that's the way we go today, we go where he goes. We go where that little baby is headed, step by step. The light pulls us out of ourselves and into the world. Again and again, we can see that glimmer of God at work in the world. God bringing peace. God encouraging growth, calling us to forgive. We see the glimmer of God standing with the poor and the oppressed. Step by step, as we are drawn into that true light, we can see a little more clearly, can't we? The fog, the flashy lights, they ultimately have no power over us in the presence of that brightest of stars, do they? Time and again, we are given the opportunity even to reflect that light, to shine out into the fog and point to the true light. Close your eyes and take a step. Let's go out today with the Magi onto that unfamiliar road, on another path, and open our eyes to see God's presence in the world, to trust God to light that path, step by step by step. Hymn 84 calls to that brightest and best of the stars. If you would turn and rise, we will sing.